back to my channel. My name is Taylor Puri, and if you haven't been here before, thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, like, subscribed, and share this video, let's go ahead and do that, and we'll get right into it. In my last video, which I've linked it below here, we talked about I opened a wedding venue during the pandemic. Yes, your girl and her business partner, we went through a 3-year renovation of a historical building downtown Columbus, Ohio. I shared that story in my last video, but today's video about opening your own brick and mortar or your own event venue. And the title of today's message is, where do I start? Where do I start? There's so many places that you could choose to start, but I'm going to tell you what you really need to know right now, but you can start today. I took you guys on through a journey on how we got started on opening Genesis Downtown, which is the name of my venue, along with my business partner, Karima. You'll hear me mention her name more than one time throughout the journey of these YouTube video series. Started back in 2020, and we have now been open for a year because we technically did not open our doors until 2023. But I want to go ahead and pull you guys back a little bit and start from the very beginning on how I even got to this point. A lot of business owners will tell you that it takes a long time to grow a business, to start a business, and that things don't happen overnight, and that is true. But I also want to emphasize the fact that you don't have to start when you're absolutely ready. You're gonna have to do this afraid, because a lot of things that are, especially if you're a first-time entrepreneur like myself, you're gonna learn to do things in fear. You just kind of get used to what that feels like, what that looks like, and a lot of it is just jumping in by faith. But I want to kind of just give you my personal take on what I would recommend that you do. And again, everyone goes in different routes depending on the industry, but I want to set the foundation, because before this venue even came to life, before my business partner and I linked together to open up the venue, this is what I did to get started. So the number one thing that you should start today is educating yourself. I know that doesn't sound super sexy, but it is something that you definitely want to do and need to do. So I'll give you guys 3 ways on how I do that. We all know that knowledge is power, right? And so the first thing that I would do is educate yourself via books and or podcasts. I'm a podcast girl. I'm constantly on the run anyway, between going to the venue, between having events, being a mom, being a wife, grocery shopping, errands here, working full time. I'm always in my car. So for me, podcasts work. My downtime during the evenings is typically meant for catching up on venue stuff. And so I don't really have a ton of time to sit and actually open up a book. So I choose to do podcasts or audibles. There are a few of them that I really, really love. First one is by Guy Raz, and it's called How I Built This. It gives you some insight into the minds of people who have already made it, right? So like the owners of Ben & Jerry's, everyone loves Ben & Jerry ice cream. I don't know anybody that doesn't like their ice cream, but they tell you on how they actually got to where they are. And it's just so interesting. Just kind of find little nuggets in there that I can take back and apply to my own business endeavors, or just see some similarities between different podcast stories that are like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is not a out of the norm situation. This entrepreneur experienced it. That entrepreneur experienced it. And so that's a really good one to just understand like where people were when they got started and knowing who they are today. And another podcast that I really, really love is the Gold Digger Podcast, GOAL, Gold Digger Podcast by Jenna Kutcher. When I tell you, the girl knows her stuff. She started off as a wedding photographer that grew into a 6-figure business and then began to teach other photographers and eventually other creatives. It goes from everything about marketing and social media advertisement and how to keep it sustainable to talking about mental health within a business, because that is a whole nother podcast, whole nother YouTube video for another day. She has some really good resources and materials that you want to check out on her website. So definitely check out Jenna Kutcher's Gold Digger Podcast. Another podcast that I really love, and one of my ultimate favorites, is the Venue Podcast. That is going to speak to those, you and I, who are looking to open up our own venue or who have opened up our own venue. That podcast is ran by Lindsay as well as Kinsey Roberts. Lindsay is a venue consultant, and Kinsey Roberts also a consultant, but she owns her own wedding venue out in Colorado. And so both of them have teamed up to bring us good education on how to grow our wedding and event venue businesses. So I'll link that one also below. One other thing I want to mention just as regards to education, this is just kind of off the top of my head that's going on right now. You want to take some time to educate yourself on your market. We're in Columbus, Ohio, and while it is always great to see what other venues are doing, whether it's in the same state or in the same city or in a different state, you want to kind of get a good idea of what everyone else is doing, not to copy, let me just say that, because everyone's expenses and things like that look different, but really just to understand what is out there in the market so that you can come back to the drawing table and to say, how can I meet an unmet need of the market? You're gonna need this when it's time for you to build your business plan, because with the business plan, that's not just something that you, got it done, now I'm gonna send it off to the bank and hopefully get approved for a loan and then never look at it again. No, a business plan is meant to be a live document that you look back and reference to make sure that you're staying on track to help you hit your targets. I wanna make sure that you are looking at what other people are doing in the market, how to stay competitive, how to make sure that you're not underpricing yourself, but also not overpricing yourself. When it comes to looking at other businesses, it is great to make sure that you look at other businesses within your industry that are in a different state. You have to be mindful and watchful for this because, again, like I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I'm not gonna really mirror a lot of things in the New York market or like an LA market because we're just on two different paths and two different price points. The cost of living in New York compared to Columbus is a whole lot different. Another thing as it relates to education that I did a lot of, and when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. You want to meet with as many people as possible that can help you get to where you're needing to go. Make sure that you're having conversations with people who are also brick and mortar owners. Talk to as many people as possible. So whether that person owns a coffee shop, a bridal retail shop, talk to other venue owners, whether they're in your state or not. Google is amazing. Now don't get me wrong, I will Google the heck out of something, but also it's always good to just talk to a real person who's gone through the trenches, that has been there and where you're trying to go. To get their perspective on what to do, what not to do, what to be cautious of. Here's how I did it, what they should have done, but they did not, things like that. Another thing that I would recommend for people that are trying to educate themselves is to educate yourself on commercial terminology. I'm telling you this now because when it gets time for you to actually open your space or for you to start looking for your space, you want to go into it with knowledge. I'll give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. One example that I'm talking about, if you're leasing, is it a triple net lease or is it a gross lease? A triple net lease is basically you're paying rent to someone, but you're not necessarily taking care of like the utilities, your gas and your electric, things like that. It's just your base rent. Now a gross lease is kind of all things encompassing, right? So you want to understand the difference between the two. Another concept that I want you to think about is the cost per square foot. You need to understand that. A lot of people honestly don't really know how much square footage that they actually need for their space. What does 500 square feet look like? What does 2,000 square feet look like? What does 10,000 square feet look like? And you have to really understand like the elements of what you want in your space. We knew, okay, we needed a ready room, some place where our brides could, do makeup in, hair and things like that. We also know that we needed a kitchenette and we needed this type of equipment within our kitchenette. We also needed the actual usable event space. All those elements play into how many square feet that you actually need. For example, if you are looking at LoopNet or Google or whatever, or walking by somewhere and they say that the price is $25 per square foot and you need 10,000 square feet, you're gonna multiply $25 times 10,000 square feet. That's gonna give you $250,000 per year. It's gonna cost you $250,000 per year to lease it out. I'm speaking mostly to lease right now because that is what we're doing. We actually don't own the building we're in, but we lease the space. So 250,000 square feet per year divided by 12, you are approximately paying per month $20,834 per month. So now your wheels are going about, okay, how am I gonna get there? So that's when you kind of work backwards almost to determine like, okay, what services can I provide that'll help me achieve these goals, and is that reasonable, right? So you have to consider those types of elements. Another term that I want you to get familiar with is called TI. That is short for tenant improvement. A lot of times, building owners, if they're leasing out a couple of their spaces, they are gonna say, hey, we wanna offer you $10 per square foot in TI dollars or tenant improvement dollars. So let's say that you need 2,000 square feet of space, and the owner of the building is offering you $10 per square foot in TI dollars or tenant improvement dollars. This means that owner is going to contribute $20,000 towards your build out. This is money that you do not have to pay back. They're going to fund your dream. Now, it doesn't mean that that is the end all be all and that the space is going to cost you $20,000 to build out. No, it just means that it's going to take a little bit of a burden off of you to have to foot that part of the bill. For us, our owners offered a pretty significant amount where we had about $130,000 worth of tenant improvement dollars. That was not the total cost of the project, but that was about what they were allocating to us to get our dreams started, which was a huge help. Super old building, and again, it's sat vacant for a while, so we don't know what the bones looked like underneath there, but I would always encourage someone who is leasing a space to look for a venue that offers tenant improvement dollars. The last term that I want you to get familiar with is the word shell. If the building is in shell condition, if the space is in shell condition, what does that mean? Shell condition means that there's nothing there. Plumbing probably is not established, electrical lines, it is shell space, a shell. That you're not really getting anything. So if you see a listing that says 20,000 square feet of space, you're like, yes, beautiful windows in there, yes, but it's in shell condition. That means you're gonna have to put forth a lot of work and a lot of money to make it come to life. Be leery about spaces that are in shell condition, because a lot of times that means you still have to establish the bones of it. The last thing that I want you to get familiar with is financial terminology. Let me preface this by saying that this information that I'm going to share is for the person who needs to start from the bare bones, from the beginning, someone that is not seasoned. I get that there's a whole lot more to this, but I want to speak to those that are just getting started, because if I don't start with the basics, you're going to be overwhelmed. And I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I want you to feel like you can accomplish this and you can get to the next step and pursue your dreams of opening your own brick and mortar space. One thing that I want you to get familiar with is forecasting. Forecasting is basically projecting where you're going to be with your particular business model and the services that you plan to offer or the products you plan to offer. Understanding, okay, when are my slow seasons? How much in revenue am I going to produce January, February, and March? For example, let's say you would like to open your own coffee shop. This is coming from someone who doesn't own a coffee shop, probably will never open up a coffee shop, but I'm trying to think as if I did, right? We know people love to drink coffee year round, but I also know that during particular parts of the season, my numbers are probably gonna spike. The holiday season, October, November, December. Now, if you're in Florida, your numbers might be a little bit lower. You might see a spike in coffee sales like around Mother's Day, Administration Day. People are looking to get gift cards for their teachers, for their moms, for their wives. If you own a swimsuit shop, you might forecast that you are gonna have high sales January through June because people are getting ready for spring break. The summer is in effect, kids are gonna be out of school soon, and swimsuits are gonna start being requested off the racks or offline constantly. That's forecasting. It's projecting on when you're gonna reach those sales. So get familiar with the term forecasting and forecast. Also know your forecast is going to do this. It's going to change. It should not be a one and done deal. Yes, you should be able to set your budget for the year of what you want to ultimately achieve, but you then after that want to make sure you stay on your forecast and adjust it accordingly so you know when you're going to hit your numbers or when you're falling behind. It's a live document. It should always be updated. Another term that you want to get familiar with is profit and loss, also known as P&L. This essentially shows you on paper how profitable or not your business is. You want to pull those on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis. It's going to help show you if you're overpriced, if you're underpriced, how much you are making compared to your actual expenses. You want to analyze where you are month to date, quarter to date, year to date. Another term that I want you to get familiar with, cash flow. You ever heard that term or that phrase, cash is king? The thing that makes businesses go under is lack of cash. Are you spending quicker than you're actually getting in? A lot of times, people don't necessarily have a lack of money. They just are mismanaging cash flow. Let me give you a live example. Let's say you get paid once a month. Let's say you get paid on the 1st of every month. You have a ton of bills that come out between the 1st and the 15th. That's what happens between the 16th and then the end of the month. You're struggling to pay your bills because everything comes out at the beginning, not leaving you enough cash to get you through the next pay. Cash flow. It's not that you're lacking income, you just don't have cash flow to keep it going until you get the next pay. It's the same thing in business. So you always want to make sure that your deposit schedules, if you have a service-based business, your deposit schedules are spaced out enough to where it makes sense on the back end. So that's why I always say, don't necessarily copy what the other venue is doing, because you have no idea what their expenses are, how much their expenses are, and when those expenses are hitting. You don't want to do that. That will set you up for failure. I will say that we are still learning that as a new business, but we are definitely getting better at it. So cash flow is a huge thing in business, and you never want to run out of cash. That is why a lot of businesses go under. All right, to sum it up, you want to educate yourself, and you're going to educate yourself by reading books or listening to podcasts. I'll link those below. You want to meet with several different people that own venues or own other brick and mortar spaces, or just are going to be within your circle at some period of time, i.e. an attorney, i.e. an accountant. And mind you, accountant and bookkeeper, two different things. The third thing that I want you to keep in mind is the commercial terminology that we talked about. Again, I know this video is not a very sexy topic to discuss, but it is something that is needed, and a lot of people don't talk about it, or they want to make you think that they just got from point A to point Z overnight and that they just went forward to looking for a space. What good is it going to do you if you go out and search all day and all night for the perfect space and have no idea what they're even talking about when it comes time to that? And here's another point I want to say. I have two things I want to say. Number one, at the end of the day, God comes first. So you can look all this stuff up and have all this research and everything like that, but there is something to say about the favor of God on your life and what you're doing, and that He does answer prayers, and He looks at your dreams. He knows what you're thinking before you even do. So always keep that in mind, that some things may not go as planned, but like I said in the last video, they're gonna go as planned and how they need to be. So always keep that in mind. Number two, commercial real estate is not warm and fuzzy. It's a very male-dominated industry, and if you are, let's say, a minority, it can come off very intimidating at times. You do have to keep that in mind when you are going through the trenches, because you will at some point in time, but make sure that you keep your head up high, that you know what you're talking about, that you educate yourself, you know your numbers. Always know your numbers. We're gonna have a whole video later down the line that talks about the business plan. I know there's a lot of controversy between should you have a business plan or should you not? Do people even read business plans still? How long did my business plan should only be 3 pages? Why is hers 50 pages? Like all the nuances. Should I outsource my business plan? Should I not? Should I do it in-house? We're gonna talk about all of that. But at the end of the day, you do need to know your numbers. Getting a notepad, call that notepad my dream or my vision or whatever the name of your business, if you have that already. Start writing down your thoughts, writing down your numbers, even if it's just like a night and you're just brain dumping. Nothing may make sense, but you know it makes sense. All right, you guys, that's all I've got for you today. I hope this was super helpful for you. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone that might be looking to open up their own venue or open up their brick and mortar. I'll link everything down below in the description box, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.